What if you could live each day with a calm mind, unshaken by stress, anger, or fear? You feel in full control of your emotions, not because life is easy, but because you've trained your mind to stay strong no matter what comes your way. Now, ask yourself this. How many times have you let a single comment ruin your whole day? How often have you snapped, cried, shut down, or burned bridges because you couldn't pause for even 5 seconds? We like to believe we're in control, but the truth is most of us are prisoners of our emotions, dragged around by every insult, delay, or disappointment. It's not the world that's tearing you apart. It's the stories your mind tells in reaction to it. And that's what the Stoics knew. That freedom doesn't come from fixing the world. It comes from mastering the one thing you actually control, yourself. If you're tired of reacting without thinking, of drowning in emotions that leave you empty and exhausted, then stay with me. Because what you'll learn here will challenge everything you've assumed about strength, peace, and power. If that sounds like the kind of strength you've been searching for, then take a second to subscribe. Not for quick fixes, but for steady growth. Because here, we don't chase comfort. We pursue wisdom, resilience, and inner peace. And every lesson brings you one step closer to the person you were meant to become. 1. Audit the source of your emotions. Have you ever walked away from a conversation replaying it in your head over and over again, thinking about what they said, how they said it, what they really meant underneath the words? Your heart starts racing, your jaw tightens, your stomach knots up, and suddenly you're deep in your own emotional spiral, even though the actual moment has long passed. It's strange, isn't it? How something so small, a glance, a sentence, a silence, can grow into this massive storm inside your mind. But here's the truth. No one teaches us in school that storm didn't come from them. It came from you, from your thoughts, from the meaning you gave it. And that's not a flaw, that's being human, but it is something you can change. The Stoics were among the first to point this out with sharp clarity. Epictetus said it best. We are not disturbed by events, but by our opinions about them. That quote, it's not a riddle, it's a mirror. What upsets us isn't the thing itself, it's the interpretation. You're not angry because someone ignored you. You're angry because you believed it meant you weren't worth their time. You're not anxious because your boss sent a vague email. You're anxious because your brain ran a horror movie in your head about being fired, judged, or rejected. The trigger is external, but the explosion happens inside. That's why Stoicism starts here, with awareness. It teaches you to look under the hood of your emotions, not to avoid them, not to suppress them, but to understand them. Because if you never pause and ask, why am I really feeling this way? You'll spend your whole life reacting to ghosts, ghosts of your past, ghosts of your fears, ghosts of assumptions that aren't even true anymore. So let's get real. Let's slow it down. Next time something punches you in the gut emotionally, before you spiral, before you shut down or explode, try asking yourself this. What belief is behind this reaction? What's the narrative I'm buying into right now? Is it something I've questioned before? Or is it just running on autopilot? Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That hits hard, doesn't it? Because most of us don't even realize how much of our emotional life is shaped by unconscious beliefs. Stories we absorbed in childhood, fears we never fully healed, conclusions we made when we were too young to understand. Maybe your anger isn't about today. Maybe it's a defense mechanism you built years ago to protect yourself from being ignored or humiliated. Maybe your anxiety isn't really about the email. Maybe it's about needing to feel in control because your life once felt wildly out of control. When you stop treating every emotion as gospel and start getting curious about where they come from, something powerful happens. You begin to unhook. You stop being owned by the emotion. You start owning it. This is where real freedom lives, not in trying to make the world less stressful, but in training yourself to stop interpreting everything as a threat. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." He wasn't saying, pretend bad things don't happen. He was saying, your power lies in how you choose to interpret those things. And once you get this, you stop playing defense against life. You stop being a puppet pulled by emotion. You start stepping into your own authority. Think of your emotions like alarm systems. They go off when something feels wrong. But like any alarm, sometimes they're accurate, and sometimes they're just glitching. If you never investigate, you're just running around putting out fake fires. That's exhausting. That's how you burn out. The better path? Listen to the alarm, but check the wiring. Ask, is this emotion coming from now, or is it coming from somewhere deeper? Maybe you're reacting to a tone of voice because it reminds you of someone who hurt you in the past. Maybe you're shutting down in relationships not because people are untrustworthy, but because you've been hurt before and haven't fully rebuilt that trust in yourself yet. This isn't weakness, this is insight. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And he was right. Your imagination is powerful. If you don't know how to direct it, it will use you. It will trick you into feeling danger where there is none. It will make you panic over things that don't exist. But when you learn to examine what's real and what's imagined, your mind becomes a place of power instead of panic. This kind of emotional awareness isn't just a personal practice, it's a philosophical one. It's about choosing to live by logos, the Stoic idea of reason, instead of chaos. It's about elevating your response above the level of raw instinct. Because let's be honest, instinct can be messy. Instinct can tell you to lash out, run away, or shut down. But reason? Reason tells you to pause, to reflect, to choose your response based on who you want to be, not how you feel in the moment. And that right there is the work. That's where it gets real. Because mastering your emotions doesn't mean you don't feel them. It means you stop being dominated by them. It means learning to sit with discomfort without letting it drive your decisions. It means understanding that your reaction is a choice, even when it doesn't feel like one. That space? Most people don't know it exists, but you can find it. It starts with questions. It starts with curiosity. It starts with the willingness to pause and say, hold on, what's really going on here? And that's not easy. You'll mess up. You'll react too quickly. You'll fall back into old stories. That's normal. That's part of training the mind. But the more you ask these questions, the more power you build. The more emotional patterns you spot, the more choice you create. And eventually, what used to trigger you into silence or rage or fear starts to feel smaller. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. The goal isn't to become numb, it's to become aware. There's a big difference. Stoicism doesn't tell you to suppress your feelings. It tells you to examine them, to understand them, to guide them with reason. It's not about becoming a cold robot. It's about becoming a wise human, someone who can feel everything deeply and still act with clarity. Someone who doesn't need to escape pain because they've built resilience within it. You can be that person. You already have the raw material. You just need the framework. And it starts with this one simple habit. When you feel something strong, don't just react. Pause. Get curious. Ask what belief is behind it Ask if that belief is even true anymore. Ask if it's serving the person you're trying to become. Because when you understand where your emotions are coming from, you no longer have to obey them. You get to decide what stays, what changes, what you want to do with the energy inside you. 2. Train your mind with mental rehearsal. Have you ever noticed how life rarely goes exactly the way you planned? You set your alarm early, determined to have a productive day, and then your phone dies overnight. You walk into a conversation expecting connection, and instead, you're met with silence or sarcasm. Or maybe you're riding high on some good news, only to get hit with a call that knocks the wind out of you. It happens to everyone. The truth is, chaos doesn't ask for your permission, it just shows up. And most people, they're constantly caught off guard, emotionally wrecked, thrown off course, not because the world is especially cruel to them, but because they never trained for the moments that break them. They assumed life would play nice. Stoics never did. The Stoics expected adversity, not in a pessimistic, gloomy way, but in a clear-eyed, grounded way. They knew that peace doesn't come from pretending bad things won't happen. Peace comes from being mentally ready when they do. That's where premeditatio malorum comes in. It's a Latin phrase that literally means the premeditation of evils. But don't let the drama of that wording fool you. It's not about being negative. It's about being prepared. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. It's about building the kind of inner strength that doesn't shatter at the first sign of trouble. Imagine this like going to the mental gym. When you lift weights, you're not hoping life throws a dumbbell at your face. You're training your body to handle resistance, so that when you have to carry something heavy, you're not shocked by the weight. That's what premeditatio malorum is for your mind. It's emotional weightlifting. It's training for your nervous system. It's rehearsing the storm, so when it hits, you don't panic. You breathe, you don't flinch, you act, you don't crumble, you stand. Here's how it works in practice. Before your day begins, before you step into the noise of the world, take a quiet moment and run through what could go wrong. Not in a catastrophizing way, not to scare yourself, but to build calm. Picture someone insulting you today. Think of a plan falling apart. Think of a friend not showing up for you or a delay ruining your schedule. Then ask yourself, how will I respond if that happens? Visualize yourself staying composed, breathing slowly, choosing clarity instead of chaos. That's the whole point. Not to live in fear, but to prepare for life with resilience. As Marcus Aurelius put it, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. We live in a culture obsessed with control. Control your image, control your schedule, control your future. But the Stoics understood that much of life is uncontrollable. You can't control how someone else behaves. You can't control what the market does, or how fast the traffic moves, or whether someone texts you back. But you can control your response. You can control how mentally ready you are to meet discomfort when it arrives. That readiness changes everything. Because when you expect the unexpected, you stop being rattled by it. You respond instead of react. Carl Jung once said, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you do not know, the world will tell you." That applies here. When chaos hits and you haven't trained your mind, your emotions will decide who you are for you. You'll default to panic, to anger, to self-pity, to victimhood. But when you've taken the time to reflect, when you've practiced imagining difficulty and chosen your response, you don't collapse into the noise. You rise above it. You remember who you are. That's the power of this Stoic exercise. It teaches you to respond from character, not just from impulse. Let's get even more practical. You don't need an hour. You don't need candles or incense or a journal with gold edges. You need 3 minutes and your brain. Tomorrow morning, before you check your phone, before the world hijacks your attention, take a breath and ask, what might go wrong today? Not in a paranoid way, in a strategic way. Then say to yourself, if that happens, I will stay calm. I will respond with reason. I will not let it steal my peace. Do this every morning and watch how different you move through your day. Watch how much less surprised you are when life doesn't go your way. Watch how quickly you return to center when someone tries to throw you off. Seneca wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." That's what this is about, taking the sting out of the unexpected by expecting it. Think of a firefighter. They don't hope for fire, but they train like it's coming. They run drills. They imagine the worst so they can bring their best. That's what premeditatio malorum does for your emotional life. It makes you mentally agile, emotionally armored, calm, not because life is perfect, but because you've rehearsed your peace. And here's something important. This practice doesn't make you cold. It doesn't make you cynical. It actually opens the door to deeper gratitude. When you imagine loss, even for a moment, you appreciate what you still have. When you think of the day going sideways, and it doesn't, you smile more, you breathe deeper, you stop taking the ordinary for granted. The Stoics weren't just teaching emotional resilience, they were teaching presence. They were teaching us to wake up to life by facing its impermanence head-on. That's why this practice is more than just mental training. It's soul work. It reminds you that everything you have is temporary, and when you accept that, you stop clinging. You stop fearing loss. You stop panicking when things don't go your way. And instead, you start living fully, freely, intentionally. This isn't theory. It's discipline. And like any discipline, it starts small. One morning, one breath, one imagined difficulty followed by one clear, strong response. You do this enough times and your brain starts to adapt. You start becoming the kind of person who doesn't need everything to go perfectly in order to stay steady. You start becoming the kind of person who people look to in a crisis because you're calm when others collapse. And that's the real gift of Stoicism. Not just that it helps you suffer less, but that it helps you lead better, love deeper, respond wiser. It gives you the tools to walk through chaos without losing your center. And in a world constantly spinning, that is a rare and powerful thing. 3. Name the emotion to tame it. You know that moment when your heart starts pounding, your chest tightens, and your mind starts racing? Maybe someone just disrespected you, maybe your plans fell apart, or maybe you're just overwhelmed by a wave of anxiety that showed up out of nowhere. Whatever it is, your first instinct is probably to do something. Snap, withdraw, distract yourself, or bury the feeling deep down and hope it goes away. But what if the most powerful thing you could do in that moment was nothing? What if, instead of reacting, you simply named what you were feeling? This is anger. This is fear. This is shame. It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? Like something a therapist might say offhandedly. But it's not fluff. It's a deeply grounded psychological and philosophical practice, and it works. Because the moment you name the emotion, you create space. You stop being inside the storm and start watching it from the outside. And from that place, you get your power back. The Stoics didn't have neuroscience, but they understood this truth centuries ago. And emotions are nothing if not judgments. They're mental interpretations wrapped in physical sensations. When you say, "This is anger," you're not denying it. You're acknowledging it. You're pulling it out of the shadows and into the light, where it loses some of its grip. Because here's the thing, emotions thrive in chaos. They grow louder when you ignore them or let them operate silently. But when you name them, you shrink their power. Modern psychology backs this up too. Naming emotions is a cornerstone of emotional regulation. Dr. Dan Siegel coined the phrase, "name it to tame it," and it's been echoed by countless researchers since. Why? Because labeling an emotion activates the prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, and reduces activity in the amygdala, the part responsible for fight, flight, or freeze. In simple terms, naming a feeling helps you stop being the feeling. You think you're just having a bad day, but really you're avoiding the truth that you're hurt, insecure, or grieving. You think you're just annoyed, but maybe you're actually scared. And when you can't name it, you can't work with it. So how do you practice this? Start with awareness. The next time your stomach drops, your shoulders tense up, or your voice gets sharp, pause. Don't act. Don't run to your phone or lash out or escape into a distraction. Just pause, take a breath, and say the words, "This is frustration. This is sadness. This is jealousy." Say it to yourself. Say it quietly. Say it without judgment. Because you're not wrong for feeling it. You're human. Think of it like this. Emotions are messengers. They're trying to tell you something. Anger might be pointing to a boundary crossed. Fear might be highlighting a place where you feel vulnerable or uncertain. Shame might be asking you to examine whether you're living in alignment with your values. But if you don't name the emotion, you miss the message. It just becomes static noise, and worse, it drives your behavior without your consent. This is especially important in relationships. How many arguments, how many cold silences, how many painful words have come not from truth, but from unspoken emotions taking the wheel? Imagine how different your conversations would be if you could say, "I'm feeling insecure," instead of projecting that insecurity as blame or sarcasm. Imagine saying, "I'm overwhelmed," instead of exploding in frustration. That kind of honesty doesn't make you weak. It makes you powerful. It makes you real. Now I get it. Naming emotions can feel awkward at first. It feels unnatural to slow down and say something so simple out loud or even in your mind. But that's only because we're not used to doing it. Most of us were raised to power through, suppress, or toughen up. But here's the paradox. True toughness starts with truth, and truth begins with awareness. If you can't tell yourself what you're feeling, you can't expect to understand your reactions or change them. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal, which we now know as Meditations, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That's not just ancient wisdom. That's a challenge, a call to step into responsibility, and it starts with learning to name your inner world. So make this a habit. Build it into your day. When you wake up feeling off, before labeling the day as bad, ask yourself what emotion is actually present. When you feel tension in your chest during a conversation, check in. What is this really? And when you feel the urge to react, especially when the feeling is strong, take that as your cue. Stop, name it, watch it, then decide. Because here's the beautiful shift that happens. The moment you name the emotion, you're no longer being pushed by it. You're standing beside it. You're the observer, not the reactor. And that shift, that's freedom. That's where self-control begins, not in suppressing your feelings, but in understanding them. And look, this doesn't mean you'll always get it right. There will be times you name the wrong emotion, times you still react too fast. That's okay. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. It's about moving from autopilot to awareness. And every time you do that, even once, you take a step toward becoming the kind of person who owns their emotions instead of being owned by them. Remember, you don't have to fix the feeling. You don't have to explain it away or justify it. You just have to name it. Let that be enough for now. Let that be the beginning. Because once you name it, you can tame it. And once you tame it, you can use it, not as a weapon against yourself, but as wisdom for your path. 4. Choose discomfort on purpose. Let's talk about something that most people don't want to hear. Something we avoid, even though deep down we know it's true. We're soft. Not in a moral way or a character way, but mentally, emotionally. We live in a world designed to make everything easier, faster, more convenient. Food delivered in minutes, comfort on demand, entertainment 24/7, a warm bed, a hot shower, a phone full of distractions. And it feels good, no doubt. But here's the price no one talks about. Too much comfort makes us fragile. The less we face discomfort, the less we can handle it. We stop growing. We stop strengthening. We become emotionally dependent on ease. And when life stops being easy, we crumble. The Stoics saw this danger over 2,000 years ago, and they had a solution: voluntary discomfort. That sounds harsh, right? Like, why would anyone choose to make life harder than it already is? But the answer is simple. Because when you train your mind to handle discomfort on your terms, you become far more capable of handling it when it's not. That's strength. That's freedom. That quote isn't about punishing yourself. It's about breaking the illusion that you need constant comfort to feel okay. Because you don't. You've just been conditioned to believe you do. Most of us avoid discomfort at all costs. We get irritable if our coffee order is wrong. We feel lost if our phone dies. We complain about things our ancestors wouldn't even recognize as problems. But here's the thing. Life will be uncomfortable sometimes. Plans fall apart. People disappoint us. Our bodies fail. Tragedy hits. And if you haven't trained your mind to face discomfort before that day comes, you'll be mentally unprepared when it does. That's why the Stoics practiced discomfort regularly. Cold showers, skipping meals, wearing rough clothes, sleeping on the floor. These weren't acts of self-punishment. They were acts of self-empowerment. Each one said, "I am not ruled by my cravings. I am not a slave to ease. I can endure discomfort and still be okay." That kind of training builds real toughness, not the performative kind where people yell and pound their chests, but quiet, steady resilience, the kind that says, "I can sit with discomfort and not run away from it." Modern psychology actually supports this. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And isn't that what we do with comfort? We scroll, we snack, we binge, we avoid anything to not sit with the raw parts of ourselves. But if you want to grow, truly grow, you have to learn to face discomfort, not run from it. You have to stop seeing it as the enemy and start seeing it as the gym where your mind gets stronger. And no, you don't have to start with something extreme. You don't have to sleep in the woods or fast for 3 days. You start small. That's where real transformation begins. Take one discomfort per day, something small but intentional. Skip sugar for 24 hours. Take a cold shower. Don't touch your phone for an evening. Wake up earlier than usual. Walk instead of drive. Speak up in a situation where you'd normally stay silent. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is why you're doing it. Not to punish yourself, not to prove something to anyone else, but to prove to yourself that you are capable of choosing growth over comfort. Each time you do this, your brain rewires, your nervous system recalibrates, you expand your window of tolerance, and the next time life gets tough, and it will, you won't be so thrown off. You won't spiral the second something goes wrong. You'll have a memory bank of moments when you faced discomfort and survived. Better yet, when you chose it and grew. This is the mindset that sets people apart. It's not that some people are born tougher or calmer or more resilient. It's that they've trained for it. They've practiced for it. Marcus Aurelius didn't have a peaceful life. He faced war, betrayal, loss, and sickness. But he still wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's the whole point. Discomfort isn't something to avoid. It's something to use. And when you live like this, something shifts. You stop needing life to be perfect in order to feel okay. You stop demanding that everything go your way. You stop breaking down every time something doesn't. Instead, you meet it with calm, with clarity, with that quiet strength you've been building in the background, one uncomfortable choice at a time. You also gain something else that most people miss: deep gratitude. Because when you go without, even for a short time, you start appreciating the small comforts more. A hot shower feels like luxury. A quiet meal feels sacred. A warm bed feels like a gift. Voluntary discomfort doesn't make you bitter. It makes you present. It makes you grateful for what's already here. And that gratitude, that's a kind of emotional wealth you can't fake. So ask yourself, what's one small discomfort you can choose today? Not to prove how hardcore you are, not to impress anyone, but to train, to build inner strength, to remind yourself that comfort is a luxury, not a requirement, that you can be okay even when things aren't easy. Because that's what Stoicism teaches at its core, that your peace doesn't come from how comfortable your life is. It comes from how resilient your mind is, from how willing you are to sit in discomfort, breathe through it, and come out stronger on the other side. Choose the cold shower, skip the dessert, say no to the thing that numbs you, sit with that awkward feeling instead of hiding from it. Do it not to suffer, but to grow. Because one day, maybe soon, life will hand you something hard, something you didn't choose, and when that day comes, you'll be ready. Not because it's easy, but because you're stronger than your need for easy. 5. Zoom out for perspective. Have you ever been caught in a moment where your world shrinks to the size of a single offense, a missed message, or one harsh glance? You're at your desk, feeling unstoppable, and then your boss snaps at you. Suddenly, everything falls apart. A text goes unread, and you replay it in your head 100 times. When something seems small, we often blow it up inside us, giving it power it doesn't deserve. But sometimes the problem isn't the problem, it's that we're way too zoomed in. Stoicism calls this missing the bigger picture, and they taught a powerful remedy for it: the view from above. Imagine this: you mentally step back from the chaos. You rise out of your body, out of your office, out of your city, and then drift upward until you're floating in space. Down below, the earth is a fragile, glowing marble suspended in the void. And somewhere on that marble, you are just one dot among billions. Now, as you observe yourself as that tiny dot, ask, will this moment define your week? Will it matter a year from now? When you're old, rich with wrinkles and memories, will this drama still hold you hostage? Probably not. It's not that these little things are meaningless. It's that we've lost perspective. We've forgotten how vast the world is. And when we jump back into the thick of things, we carry that perspective with us, like emotional body armor. This technique, practiced by Marcus Aurelius himself, allowed him to refuse the tyranny of small inconveniences and deep disappointments. It allowed him to see himself not as the victim of minute events, but as a traveler moving through the vastness of life. Now, this mental habit might sound mystical, but it's simple. Picture it like resizing your emotional lens. Most of us suffer not because life is out of control, but because we're too close to the noise. Think about your phone. When you take a macro photo, everything is blurred and blown out. But step back just a bit, and suddenly you see the whole scene in focus. That's how the view from above works on your emotions. It slides you out of high-definition drama into full-spectrum clarity. You still feel the sting, you still see the hurt, but you don't drown in it. You witness it, you locate it, and you decide whether to engage or release. The Stoics taught this because they weren't trying to be detached philosophers. They were leaders, survivors, humans. They knew mistakes happen, plans derail, friends abandon you. And yet, when you have the view from above, you don't collapse into self-pity. You say, okay, that happened. But not everything did, and not all is lost. When you experience a breakup, instead of spiraling into despair, you remember your life is vast. When you lose a job, it's still just one chapter in an entire saga. That's the freedom of this perspective. It doesn't make you uncaring. It makes you emotionally powerful. Carl Jung spoke to this when he said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Part of awakening is zooming out. It's seeing that the emotion tugging at you isn't the whole story, not even close. You're not your anxiety. You're not your shame. You are the observer holding them, floating outside them. That shift unlocks choice. And once you realize you're more than your worst moment, you start acting like it. The weight might still be there, but you're not carrying it with your identity. You're carrying it with your back muscles, strong from training. Now, let me say this clearly. Using the view from above doesn't mean avoiding responsibility or ignoring pain. It doesn't mean you don't care about what happens. It doesn't mean Stoics are cold. True Stoicism is warmth grounded in sight. It's courage rooted in perspective. It's the ability to care without collapsing. You can feel sadness without losing direction. You can feel frustration without burning bridges. You can go through hell and still remember the stars are watching. But here's a twist. The view from above doesn't only help with negative moments, it also amplifies your gratitude. When you zoom out to see yourself riding that marble in the cosmos, you realize how much is working in your favor. A roof, friends, food, sunshine, a beating heart. Perspective brightens what's good, anchors what's bad, and reminds you that most of life, is neutral. You're just zooming into the rare flickers. That helps you breathe, helps you choose, helps you live more fully. You don't lose yourself in regret. You don't break under stress. Because you carry the knowledge that your life is bigger than this. You are a soul floating through time and space. You're resilient not because bad stuff stopped happening, but because your awareness got bigger than the bad stuff. So here's what you do. And you don't need a chronic crisis or a guru-approved retreat. You just need 3 minutes. The next time you feel the small voice taking over, "This is huge. This is it. I can't handle this." Pause. Look up in your mind, out into the sky. See your town shrink. See your life shrink. See your problems become tiny specks compared to the infinite. And then ask, will this matter when I'm old? When I'm wise? When I'm grateful for surviving? Try it today. Feel the shift. See how your chest softens. How your mind gets quiet enough to notice what truly matters. How you reclaim agency. If life really is unpredictable, and it is, then you might as well build a filter that turns noise into context. That makes the world feel less big and unmanageable. That gives you space to breathe, space to choose, space to become who you really are. Because you're not just a character in a small story of drama. You're a soul riding a marble in the cosmos. That's perspective. That's freedom. That's Stoicism in practice. And next time the world tries to shrink you, zoom outside. 6. Ask if the emotion is useful. There's a moment, often in the middle of a tense conversation or while lying awake at 2 a.m., where your mind feels like it's been hijacked by emotion. Your heart is racing. Your thoughts are looping. You feel stuck, powerless, and a little out of control. But here's the thing. Most of the time, the emotion itself isn't what's destroying your peace. It's your refusal to question it. So here's a life-saving question you can start asking in that exact moment. Is this emotion actually helping me right now? It might sound simple, almost too simple, but simplicity is the enemy of complexity when our minds are overrun by worry, fear, or anger. If you can learn to ask this question in the smallest moment of crisis, you start to reclaim your power. Because when you realize an emotion is burning energy instead of creating solutions, you can choose to let it go. Let's break it down. We feel anger. Why? Because someone said or did something that triggered a story in our head. They disrespected me. They're out to get me, or they should have known better. But ask, is this anger helping you solve the problem, or is it just draining you? Now, if the answer is that it's not helping, then you've already made progress just by noticing that. You've created a gap between the emotion and your decision. That gap is where freedom lives. That gap is where you can choose to say, "All right, anger, thanks for the alert, but I've got this." And then you drop it. That's emotional mastery, not suppression, but you can't drop it if you don't recognize it for what it is: noise. Sometimes we hold on to emotions because they feel justified. Anger, fear, shame, they all have stories they want to tell, but they don't get to decide your actions. You do. Stoicism reminds us that you're not your feelings, you're the chooser. Marcus Aurelius wrote something like, "Don't be swept away by sensations. They happen quickly and without warning, but imagine having the mental discipline to slow them down, to say, 'I feel this,' and then ask, 'Does this serve me?' That question is a filter for peace. Anxiety might prioritize safety over opportunity, but ask it, and you might decide that yes, anxiety is cautioning you, but not guiding you. Fear might aim to protect you, but ask it, and you may find that it's stopping you from taking a chance you really want. Fear loses its power when you put it under the spotlight. It becomes a reflection, not a dictator. Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." There's a darkness in your fear, but when that darkness becomes conscious, through questioning, it stops being a black hole. It reveals structure, origin, and purpose. Now let's look at shame. Shame is tricky. It sneaks in silence. It whispers that you're not enough, that you messed up too bad, that people will find out. But ask, is this shame helping me fix something, or is it burying me deeper? If shame isn't helping, then the only healthy response is to say, "Thanks for nothing," and let it go. Shame isn't a critical friend. It's a bully with good intentions. Stoicism teaches that true correction comes from insight, not ridicule. It's about alignment, not annihilation. If an emotion doesn't point you toward virtue, peace, or clarity, you don't have to feed it. Not everything you feel deserves your energy. Some emotions are just radio static in your head, annoying, distracting, and useless. But because you don't question them, they stick around, loop around, and multiply. They cloud your days with unnecessary pressure. The world doesn't need to give you reason to feel stressed. You'll find one anyway. But with that question, is it helping me? You become the referee of your mind rather than the victim. And that makes all the difference. Your peace matters more than your pride. That's a truth most of us struggle to admit. Pride wants us to react. It wants us to prove something. But when you pause and ask yourself that question, you often see that pride just wants to save face. It doesn't want harmony. It wants, "I win." And yes, sometimes a win is worth fighting for. But more often, a win at someone else's expense only erodes your own inner quiet. Stoics weren't indifferent. They just refused to let pride throw them off balance. They asked, "Is this reaction bringing me closer to wisdom or further away?" If it's the latter, they let it go. Think of it this way: life throws challenges at all of us, period. But the quality of our experience isn't determined by what happens. It's determined by how we let those events move us on the inside. Are they shaping us into calmer, stronger, more compassionate beings? Or are they chipping away at our center, one interaction at a time? Emotions can be teachers, but only if we treat them as lessons, not sentences. Pain is real, grief is real, anxiety is real, but they don't get to live rent-free in your mind unless you let them. And you're the gatekeeper, with one question: is this emotion helping me right now? If the answer is no, then you shut the door. Don't let the emotion ruin your day. Don't let it steal your choices. Don't let it determine your attitude. Because not all feelings deserve your attention. Not all deserve your decision-making seat. Now let's be real here. Implementing this takes practice. You'll want to scream back, or text angrily, or spiral into worry. That's normal. The first time you try this question, you'll feel the resistance. The second time, it'll still feel weird. But the third time, you'll taste freedom. Because each time you choose peace over reaction, you're wiring your brain away from chaos and toward calm. That's real growth. And growth almost never feels comfortable in the moment, which ironically reinforces the whole point. Discomfort can be a teacher if you let it. This isn't about becoming emotionless, not at all. Emotions are part of the human experience, but human beings should not be mastered by them. You don't want to be, you want to master them. Stoicism gives you a toolbox for that. And the first and perhaps most powerful tool is this question. Don't let your heart run the show until you've checked in with your head. Let peace be your landlord, not pride, not shame, not runaway tension. Because at the end of the day, your mind is your home. You decide who lives in it and what stays. So the next time you feel that familiar heat rising, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, is this emotion helping me right now? If the answer is yes, lean in and let it guide you. It might be necessary, but if the answer is no, then do yourself the favor and let it walk away. You'll feel the power shift. You'll feel the space open. You'll discover that sometimes all it takes to protect your peace is one simple, clear question. And that question can ripple through your entire day. Your choices, your resilience, your inner calm. It matters more than you know. 7. Control what you can. Let go of what you can't. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by a challenge and thought the only solution was to just walk away? To put your hands up and say, "It is what it is," hoping the storm passes? That's not Stoicism. You might actually think it is. Many confuse Stoicism with apathy, imagining it as a shrug and a half-hearted whatever. But that's not Stoicism. That's mental surrender. And surrender doesn't build strength. It builds regret. Real Stoicism is the opposite. It's about taking powerful action, but smartly. It's about directing your energy where it truly matters, in places where your hands actually have influence. You might not control the weather, but you can adjust your sails. You can't control someone else's thoughts, but you can manage your own response. The Stoics, like Epictetus, taught this through the concept of the dichotomy of control. Epictetus said, "Some things are up to us and some things are not. Anything outside your control, others' opinions, the past, the weather, they're baggage you don't need to carry. But your judgments, your efforts, your intentions, those are in your hands." And that is where Stoicism challenges you to rise up. Imagine you're an archer. You can train your arm. You can choose the right arrow. You can steady your breath and pick your target. Then you release. The shot lands, or it doesn't. But what matters is your aim, your focus, your effort. And then you release the outcome. That's the Stoic way. That's how you stay active, engaged, and sane, even when the world doesn't hand you perfect conditions. This approach isn't passivity. It's not ignoring life's problems. It's not burying your head in the sand. It's about clarity. It's about investing your energy wisely. It's about separating what you can influence from what you can't, and then moving with purpose. Take your job, for example. You can control how diligently you prepare, how clearly you communicate, how willing you are to learn. You can't control what your boss thinks or if the company pivots, so you focus on your part and let go of the rest. That's not weakness. That's emotional maturity. It's not giving up. It's choosing your battle and bringing your best. Imagine someone criticizing you online. You can't control their words. You can't force them to stop, but you can control how you interpret it. You can choose whether to let it define your mood or simply filter it through your purpose. Stoicism teaches us to act where we can, with intention, and to release what we can't. That's how you stop playing victim to external forces. This isn't Stoic resignation. It's empowerment. It's choosing to move rather than freeze. When you focus on what's within your control, you turn defeated energy into creative energy. You build confidence. You shape your character. You move forward step by step, even when the path ahead is uncertain. Don't mistake it for cynicism. Stoics aren't blind to injustice or pain. They just refuse to waste precious energy on things beyond repair. Think about a raging wildfire. Would you waste your time yelling at the flames? You'd direct your effort to the things you can do. Evacuate, build a fire line, call for help. That's exactly what Stoicism calls you to do in life. Work where you can, act where you must, and let go where you can't. If your community is suffering, you can seek justice, offer support, build solutions. You can't fix it alone. You can bring reason, effort, integrity. You can't guarantee the outcome. And that's okay. Your job is to play your part and let it serve the greater good. This mindset isn't abstract. It's practical. It releases you from emotional whiplash. When you focus only on what you can do, you stop punishing yourself or drifting into anxiety about what you can't. Ruthlessly let go of trying to control others. Rubicons don't exist in the emotional world. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It just means you refuse to be dragged into futile fights. You choose your battles, you stand for what matters, and you walk away from what doesn't. In psychology, this relates to locus of control. People who believe their actions make a difference tend to be more motivated, resilient, and mentally healthy. That's Stoicism in a nutshell. Take charge of your internal world and then act in your external world. If you do that consistently, you build trust in yourself. You build habits of purpose. You build a life shaped by choice, not chance. Now here's a question to test this in your own life. What are you trying to control that actually isn't yours to control? Opinions, outcomes, other people's emotions? Let them go and focus on what is in your grip, your effort, your attitude, your integrity. Precision over panic, discipline over disappointment. That's the Stoic system. In the end, life will always present problems. That's certain. But your life isn't defined by the problems. It's defined by how you choose to respond. Stoicism isn't saying don't care. It says care wisely. Care about where you can help. Care by doing your part. And then, for everything else, you release it. Because you deserve a life powered by action, not suffering. You deserve peace, not passive submission. You deserve to be the archer, to aim, to shoot, and to watch your own arrow fly. That is strength, that is sanity, that is Stoicism. 8. Live in harmony with your nature. You know those moments when you feel completely off, like you're living someone else's life. Maybe you're chasing the next promotion, following a trend you don't really care about, or pretending to be someone you're not just to fit in. Something in your chest tightens. You wake up exhausted from comparing yourself to standards that weren't even yours to begin with. Here's a truth the Stoics mastered centuries ago, and it still cuts deep today. You're lost when you're out of alignment, when you're living a life disconnected from who you truly are. The Stoics called this state oikeiosis, a Greek word that means living in harmony with your true nature, not chasing illusions, not acting on impulse, not drifting with society's tide, but leaning into what you were built for: rational thinking, calm presence, courage, and justice. We weren't made to be small-minded or reactive. We weren't built to hoard status like squirrels burying nuts they'll forget. We were made to be thinkers, doers, people grounded in principles, not panic. And when you lose that grounding, the emotional storms come. Anger, anxiety, regret, that tightness you feel. It's your higher self whispering, "Come back, come home." But most of us drown it by chasing things that don't fit: validation, wealth, dominance, all while our soul shrivels, unnoticed. We forget that the true goal of life isn't accumulation, it's alignment. It's choosing virtue over vanity, growth over greed, purpose over popularity. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That's universality in a sentence. Behind all the noise, social media, material pressure, hustle culture, there's a quieter invitation to step into your own self. That invitation may feel uncomfortable. It asks you to drop the act, to stop numbing, to stop wearing masks, to stop pretending that external success equals internal fulfillment. Oikeiosis is self-return. It's the journey back to your rational mind, your strong heart, your clear purpose. Let's get real. When's the last time you asked yourself, am I acting from my higher nature or am I reacting to impulses? When your anger flares at someone cutting you off in traffic, are you responding from rational boundaries or emotional chaos? When anxiety surrounds you after a negative comment, are you listening to your deeper worth or fear talking? That question starts the shift. Am I living as I was made to live? Stoicism teaches that knowing your nature isn't enough. You must act in accordance with it. You must return to your inner compass even when the storm rages. Let's break it down. Rational means thinking clearly, not letting emotions hijack your decisions. Calm means breathing through the chaos instead of joining it. Just means treating others with fairness, even when they don't treat you well. Courageous means standing for things that matter, even if you might fail or face backlash. These are not lofty ideals, they're daily choices. They're the foundation of a life lived on purpose. Each time you pick courage over comfort, calm over chaos, truth over turmoil, you're aligning, you're bringing yourself home. It isn't easy. You'll be pulled by your lower impulses constantly. Ego, habit, guilt, social fear, scrolling addiction, comfort. But that pull away from your center is evidence you're not aligned. When modern life feels chaotic, it's not because the world's extra wild. It's because you're tuned out, running on someone else's frequency, trying to fill a void with noise. Oikeiosis is the reset. It's simple, but not easy. You realign brick by brick, moment by moment. Here's how to practice it. When you feel overwhelmed, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, am I acting from my higher nature or from my lower impulse? If it's the latter, don't punish yourself. Just pivot. Try something small that reminds you who you are. Speak calmly instead of snapping. Choose a rational decision instead of emotional reaction. Show kindness instead of indifference. Face the fear instead of giving in to it. Each small choice is a return home, and every return builds something powerful, a sense of integrity you can't fake. The Stoics called this oikeiosis because they saw living aligned as natural. It isn't self-development like climbing a mountain. It's self-recovery, returning to a baseline you forgot, like finding your keys in your own house. You had them all along. Oikeiosis is remembering. There's an old Stoic image of a tree whose roots go deep. Storms blow, branches sway, leaves fall, but the roots hold strong. Oikeiosis is nurturing those roots, rationality, virtue, purpose, courage. When those roots are alive, your branches may bend, but they don't break. You'll feel stress and heartbreak. You'll experience doubt. That's life, but you won't feel lost. You're still you. Jung talked a lot about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we refuse to see, and that's part of being unaligned. You push aside shame, insecurity, fear, and pretend you're the hero when you're really half awake. The paths of virtue and cowardice, of purpose and avoidance, they run side by side. If you live in the shadow, you'll never know coherence. You'll never feel full. You'll never feel at home. Oikeiosis is treading the path of awareness. It's integrating all parts of yourself into one story: shadow and light, impulse and intention, pain and meaning. That integration brings power. Aligning with your higher nature also helps you break the consumerist trance. You start caring less about likes and more about substance, less about flashy pleasure and more about quiet dignity, less about chasing currency and more about building character. You realize you weren't made to collect trophies. You were made to make contributions. You weren't made to be safe. You were made to serve. Think about it. What if, today, someone praised you for your calm in a crisis, or your courage in speaking truth, not your outfit or follower count? What if your value came from how you treated someone who couldn't repay you? What if your purpose didn't depend on external validation, but on internal alignment? That's oikeiosis in action. That's the Stoic way. A big misconception. Aligning with your higher nature isn't about perfection. It's not about being unfeeling or relentlessly stoic in the sense of suppression. Stoicism isn't emotional starvation. It's emotional integrity. You feel rage, sorrow, longing, but you also know who you choose to be. You know your roots, and your emotions, while real, live in harmony with your nature instead of hijacking it. Your life becomes more intentional, more free. You make choices aligned with your values, not with reactive urges. When you stand by what matters, but let go of what doesn't, you stop outsourcing your peace. You stop crowding your space with noise. You stand tall, not because the world handed you a pedestal, but because you built your integrity from inside out. So here's a gentle challenge. Ask yourself daily, am I living aligned with who I am meant to be? And when the answer is no, don't feel shame, feel curiosity, and pivot. Do something that realigns you. Speak truth gently, act kindly, stay rational, choose courage, choose justice. Anchored in Stoic wisdom, choose virtue. Because that alignment, that subtle return to center, is the foundation for everything else that matters. As Seneca once said, true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. But you can't truly enjoy the present if you're living out of tune. Oikeiosis helps you own your now. It helps you root your happiness, not in what could happen or what you chase, but in who you are. Because that peace, it's unshakable. It follows you, not because life gets kinder, but because you carry calm inside. This alignment won't solve every problem. You'll still get hurt. You'll still lose. But at least you'll know who you are through it. You'll have your ground, your guideposts, your internal rhythm. You won't be thrown off by storms. You'll navigate them. And that, my friend, is the power of the Stoic path. It's a return trip to yourself, a reclaiming of the life that was yours all along. And once you're living aligned, everything you do shines with clarity, meaning, and purpose. 9. Pause before you react. Ever felt the burn of saying something you regret in the heat of the moment? Maybe it was a quiet argument in the kitchen, a tense email fired off at work, or a comment tossed at someone who didn't deserve it. Those moments when your heart races, hands clench, and words fly out like ammunition. And very soon after, when the adrenaline fades, you're left with regret, emotional debris, and that pit in your stomach. We're all guilty of it because your first reaction often hijacks your better self. But here's the thing, your second response, that thoughtful moment after the pause, is usually your real, wiser self. So here's a simple truth worth holding on to. When you're triggered, don't respond right away. Instead, give yourself a mental cue that says, pause. Let me think. Just 10 seconds. That's all it takes. Breath in, hold it, let logic show up, and then decide, will your words build or burn? Will they heal or hurt? Those few seconds are the crossroads between chaos and clarity, between reaction and reason. When you allow logic to catch up to that emotional hijack, your power comes back, and your peace, well, it gets a chance to breathe again. Stoicism teaches this. They called it an oblique strategy, a clever turn that sidesteps autopilot destruction. Epictetus, who lived under tyranny and famine, emphasized that it's not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Think about that. It means your initial emotional explosion isn't the real problem. It's your impulse to identify with it. If you pause, even for a moment, you ask an invisible question. Is this important? Is it meaningful? Is it aligned with who I want to be? That tiny gap reintroduces choice versus reaction. It's that gap where you get to decide if being kind or calm matters more than being right or reactive. That first slash of anger. It's unconscious. The pause, your breath, your step back, is where consciousness re-enters the stage. When you don't let those seconds slip by, you start laying down the neural pathways of self-control. You're no longer a puppet of that first rush. You're training yourself to choose, to pause, to bring forth the part of you that's thoughtful, clear, and intentional. The real beauty of this practice is how it rewrites your story. Let's say your partner makes an offhand remark that hits a nerve. The instinct is to snap back in defense. But if you pause, maybe take a breath, maybe sip some water, you remind yourself that this moment doesn't define your character. You create space to choose. Will I retaliate, or will I reflect and respond with care? That moment of restraint protects your relationship. It saves you from regrets that echo for days, and it carves a path toward wisdom. Your second response can be your best one. In the modern world, this habit is rare. We're wired for speed, instant reactions, viral responses, trolling at the click of a finger. But wisdom isn't fast. Wisdom waits. Wisdom questions. Wisdom is deliberate. And Husserl the Stoics knew speed is great for reflexes, not for relationships. That pause builds emotional muscle, a quietly revolutionary skill. It makes you calm while others are losing it. It makes your words matter. It makes your integrity visible. Living without these 10 seconds means living on autopilot. You'll be pulled by every insult, every text, every tweet, until you're running from reactivity all day long. You're not just stressed, you're fragmented, scattered. With those seconds, though, you become whole. You reconnect with your inner compass. You remember who you are and who you want to be. Because that pause, it's your connection to choice. Let me frame it differently. Imagine your mind as a calm lake. Emotions are like stones tossed into the water. Without pause, you become the splash, the stone itself. But when you pause, you're the observer standing at the edge. You're not the splash. You're watching it. You see its shape, ripple and fade. And then you move on. That's not coldness, it's clarity, it's emotional presence, it's the Stoic ideal. You're not being weak when you pause. You're being strong, strong enough to slow down when everyone else speeds up. That's how you build emotional intelligence. That's how you step out of drama and into dignity. And yes, people notice. They feel the difference in your calm. They grow to trust your words. They learn from your grace under tension. That's quiet leadership. This habit doesn't just change conversations, it changes you. It rewires your sense of control, of self. Instead of reacting with shame or fear or rage, you start responding with insight, with calm, with compassion. It's not perfection, it's evolution. Each time you pause, you're reinforcing that emotional magnet. Own your decisions, own your values, own your calm. Now here's the thing, life isn't going to stop testing you. It never does. People will irritate you, situations will trigger you, but your power lies in this, in keeping that tiny space intact. It's the gap that saved you once, then again, and eventually it becomes a shield, a lens, a method of being, a standard you don't want to blow past again. So don't be perfect, be present. Start offering yourself those seconds. Breathe deeply, connect with what matters, then let your words follow suit. Because those 10 seconds, they're not just time, they're potential. Potential to protect, to understand, to rise. Potential to turn an instinctive reaction into a deliberate action, and maybe even into something that shapes your world for the better. The pause isn't a trick, it's a practice, it's a pillar, it's your voice within your mind saying, hold on, let's live like humans, not like circuits. Because your identity isn't defined by your impulses, it's defined by your responses, and those snapped decisions you ultimately choose to stop. That's how you regain your center. That's how you build a life of intention. That's how you let wisdom grow through the cracks of chaos. 10. Turn setbacks into You ever notice how life seems to hit hardest when you're least expecting it? You wake up confident, ready for a good day, and then traffic jerks you around like a newbie, an email slams rejection across your face, or a project face plants in front of everyone. It feels unfair, it feels heavy. But here's something the Stoics taught. Life doesn't test you with setbacks, it trains you. Think of it this way, traffic is your patience drill. Rejection, humility drill, failure, discipline drill. That jerk in the morning rush isn't there to ruin your day. It's your dojo bell signaling it's time to practice virtue again. Marcus Aurelius once framed his struggles like this. The impediment to action advances action. In plain English, every obstacle gives you power. Each disturbance becomes a tool you can sharpen your mind with, if you let it. It's like mental weightlifting. We don't avoid the gym because lifting is hard, least of all when the world is in your face. Instead, we show up, grip the bar, flex through the resistance. Same thing with life's punches. The Stoics lived this. They didn't wander through life waiting for perfection. They stepped into the chaos daily, asking, "What is this moment here to teach me?" When rejection stung, it was a reminder to carry humility in your bones. When you failed, it was a chance to build relentless discipline. They turned every setback into a purposeful practice. What if every time something pushes you down, you didn't ask, "Why me?" but instead asked, "How am I growing through this?" A terrified client could be your moment to flex courage. A disagreement? Integrity practice. Overloaded work? Endurance test. The point isn't to suffer, it's to transform suffering into strength. You can't churn virtue out of thin air. You need friction. You need pressure. You need the emotional spark that only struggle brings. That's your fuel. Now, don't get me wrong. This isn't about becoming a martyr or romanticizing pain. It's about choice. When a setback lands, you choose whether to collapse under it or lift with it. You toss your head back and ask, what am I practicing right now? That single shift, calling it a lesson instead of a curse, changes everything. It changes how your brain writes the memory. The worst day becomes training ground instead of trauma ground. You build resilience layer by layer. Let's walk through a real-life example. Picture your boss publicly criticizes your work in a meeting. For a moment, heat floods your body. You feel cornered. Your heart pounds. Your first instinct is to fight back or to shut down. But you stop. You breathe. You say to yourself, all right, this is a discipline moment, a grace moment, a focus moment. You thank them, ask for specifics, and go back to your desk. You don't stew or sulk. You learn, you grow. That emotional crack, that's exactly the spot where virtue takes root. Here's the truth. We learn more from adversity than from comfort. Comfort rarely compels growth. Growth is uncomfortable. And the Stoics didn't avoid discomfort. They chose it. They walked through fear so they could stand stronger. They leaned into pressure so they could speak louder. They turned friction into fuel. They turned pain into purpose. You might ask, how do I start? It begins by dropping the story where life is against you. Then begin your internal checklist. The moment pain hits, label the drill. Is this endurance, preparation, compassion? Don't shrink from the challenge. Bring your best attitude and effort, knowing you're making mental gains. What did you learn? Where did you stretch? Where did you shrink? And how will you adjust next time? As you repeat this, your default mindset shifts. Your emotional reflex transforms from panicking to training. You start to crave the challenge, not because life is pleasant, but because you realize challenges are the best teachers. That text-throwing shade becomes a moment to flex self-respect. That deadline too short becomes your discipline practice. That failed plan becomes your humility boot camp. And every time you build this muscle, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see that you're not a passive player in this life. You're the coach, the athlete, the clam hitting against the oyster shell until a pearl is born. That's extraordinary agency. That's real empowerment. That's living like a modern Stoic warrior, choosing to convert life's knocks into growth. So next time you get punched, literally or metaphorically, don't dodge, don't cower. Remember the dojo, remember the turnover. Every problem is a drill. You're not being punished, you're being trained. That's not suffering, that's schooling. That's life with purpose. That's Stoicism. Your peace isn't built by avoiding hardship, it's built by transforming hardship. Your character isn't shaped by sunshine, it's shaped by storms. So count the blows, feel them, learn, and then thank them, because your true strength, it grows in those exact moments. And one day, you'll look back and realize every hit was your teacher, every scar a medal, every setback an invitation to become more of who you were meant to be. 11th, don't absorb other people's emotions. Have you ever stepped into a room and suddenly felt that invisible charge, someone else's anxiety, frustration, or anger, start to tangle with your own emotions? It's like static electricity in the air, and before you know it, you're reacting just like them. This emotional ripple effect is real. Emotions are contagious. But some people don't absorb that storm. They stay steady. They stand calm in the chaos. The Stoics called this empathic discipline. It's not about being cold or detached. It's about building boundaries that protect your inner calm while still caring deeply about others. Imagine being a tree in a wild storm. You feel the wind tugging at your branches, but your roots, they stay grounded. The Stoic approach teaches us to do the same, to witness, to care, but not to carry the emotional baggage of others. Now, isn't that clarity something we all crave? In a world of constant noise, social media rants, workplace pressure, overloaded households, most of us are on a hamster wheel of emotional reactions. We breathe in everyone else's stress and chaos. We become emotional sponges, and somehow we let these temporary storms define our mood. But according to Epictetus, it's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. There's a powerful freedom in that truth, because if someone else's anger lands in your world, you have a choice. You can let it wash over you, or you can remain anchored. You can care, but not carry. Let's picture a real-life scene. You're at work, and a co-worker starts snapping, blaming, projecting their stress onto you. Their voice is sharp, their tone harsh. Your heart tenses. The first instinct? Mirror back. Fight fire with fire. But what if you paused? What if you recognized, that's their fear or insecurity, it's not mine? You don't block them out. You listen. You respond with calm logic. You stay grounded. That's not apathy. That's wisdom. That's emotional leadership. You're not absorbing their darkness. You're staying light. And that light could actually help them find peace, because calm is contagious too. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." When someone's anger reverberates in you, it's a mirror. It could be reminding you of your own triggers. Your boundary becomes a place of growth, not just defense, but that boundary doesn't snap shut like a fortress. Instead, it's a gate where empathy meets self-protection. You offer your presence, your listening, your warmth, but you don't invite in the fire. Imagine another scenario. Someone close to you is panicking. They're scared, worried, maybe even spiraling. Now, spiraling too would be easy, but the Stoic approach? You take a breath. You steady your tone. You breathe out calm. You might say something like, "Hey, I see you're upset. Whatever happens, I'm with you." You don't fix their fear, but your steadiness helps them steady. That's empathic discipline in action. You're not the emotional sponge. You're the anchor. Psychology research shows that emotional contagion is powerful, but so is emotional regulation. When we stay calm in the midst of chaos, we influence the outcome. We shape the tone. Raised in a world full of panic triggers, this is a skill we all need. Let me give you another example. Family gatherings, tension flares, opinions clash, old wounds resurface. You can absorb it and spiral into drama, or you can ride the current with a heart anchored below the surface. You can lean toward kindness. You can choose to respond, not react. You can carry understanding, not anger. The Stoics would suggest you care, but you stay rooted in your own virtue. That way you don't spread the wildfire. You bring the calm. Still, empathic discipline isn't automatic. It takes practice. It doesn't come from avoiding feelings. It comes from anchoring in something deeper, your values, your reason, your purpose. Marcus Aurelius urged us to remember our Stoic identity. He said basically, stand in your center. Become a rock other souls can lean on, not a leaf tossed by every breeze. That doesn't make you aloof. It makes you nurturing. It makes you someone people trust. Someone who can hold the container when emotions collide. This is real leadership, not the loud, performative kind, but the quiet, resilient kind. When someone else's anxiety flares, you don't add fuel. You hold space. You listen. You validate. And you stay calm. That's emotional integrity. That's Stoicism in modern life. You don't just protect yourself. You protect the situation. You protect the connection. You remind others what steady looks like. In the long run, you don't just survive emotional storms, you help others weather them. And here's the surprising truth. Boundaries like these don't harden you, they deepen you. They make you more sensitive to nuance, not less sensitive to suffering. Because you're no longer caught up in the chaos. You're able to see it, feel it, but not absorbed by it. You become both present and clear, compassionate and wise, emotionally intelligent without being emotionally enslaved. This practice is a muscle. You build it every time you choose your center over their storm. You practice empathy without collapse. You practice listening without taking over. Piece by piece, you live as a calm in the center of life's hurricane. That calm doesn't just benefit you, it radiates outward. It's the kind of calm that shifts cultures, not just rooms. 12th, care without clinging. You know that quick stab, it could happen at any moment, when someone takes something from you. A promotion, a compliment, a relationship, a feeling of safety, and suddenly your mood flips, your mind spirals, and you feel lost. This kind of pain isn't rare. We all crave love, success, respect, basic human needs. But the Stoics noticed something dangerous. When we tie our very identity to these things, we hand over our emotional independence. It's like placing your heart in someone else's hands and praying they won't drop it. That's where preferred indifference comes in. The Stoics didn't say you have to reject health, wealth, or recognition. Not at all. They recognize these as preferred, better than their opposites. But they never allowed them to define what it meant to be human. Imagine this scenario. You get a raise, you celebrate. Then it disappears. You're demoted or laid off. You could collapse. But if your worth was tied only to that raise, then yes, you crash. Now imagine instead that you held that raise like a feather, enjoying its warmth, but never let it occupy your sense of self. When it leaves, you don't shatter. You re-anchor in virtue, in courage, in clarity. That kind of response is strength, not detachment out of apathy, but resilience born of reason. Let's dig deeper. Preferred indifference means we seek good things, but know they aren't essential. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to hinge his happiness on external conditions, writing effectively, as translated, "If something outside your control is lost, why would you be upset?" The idea, only internal virtue matters absolutely. Everything else is a plus. To live this way, to enjoy without being owned, you build mental flexibility. You love relationships, but don't cling. You pursue success, but don't tie your worth to it. You value health, but don't base your peace on it. You might say, but what's the point if I don't own it fully? The point is freedom. When you appreciate gifts without identity fusion, you gain emotional immunity. You're no longer hostage to loss. You're rooted in your own virtue, your internal compass, rather than in fleeting conditions. Ownership of your being, letting love, achievements, and safety color your days, but not own your soul. That's the privilege. Freedom to be you, no matter what changes outside. When you accept what you have, but hold it lightly, you carve a deep reservoir of peace, removing the shaky scaffold of "I matter because of X." Reinforce the truth that you matter because of who you are, not what you have, what you look like, or what others say about you. Your dignity doesn't vanish when your status does. Your integrity doesn't flee with a failure. Your composure doesn't disappear alongside your wealth. Hold those truths in your mind like fundamental laws. When you hold things lightly, you can let go without losing yourself. If you lose your home but keep your reason, you still own everything that matters. That's powerful. That's Stoic sanity. Consider this vivid scenario. You build a startup, months of sweat, money, effort. You pour yourself into it, and then the market tumbles. investors back out, you lose your vision. That would crush anyone who defines their identity as startup founder. But the Stoic founder asks, who am I without this? What strengths will I bring to the next chapter? They land on resilience, adaptability, wisdom, confidence. They're not starting over from zero, they're building upon themselves, which never bankrupts. When you're rooted in what you are, not what you've built, you're always rich in possibility. This mindset doesn't drain life's joy, it amplifies it. It turns impermanence into gratitude, because every moment becomes both precious and temporary, and you can breathe freely knowing you're safe, even when circumstances shift. If praise fades, no meltdown. If love changes, you still love. If health alters, you remain humane. That calm steadiness radiates outward. It calms others. It creates a stable presence in unstable times. There's a scene in life therapy where people brace for loss as though it's shameful or terrifying, but the Stoics anticipated that already. They said, yes, attachments will end. Prepare for that mentally, then live fully while it lasts. This doesn't kill joy, it spares you from devastation later. It means living both in the moment and above it. Enjoyment without ownership, kindness without codependence. This is emotional integrity. This is Stoic emotional architecture. So where do you begin? Start small. Choose one preferred area. Could be your phone battery, could be your role, your look, your weekend plans. Feel the tightening emotion when it's threatened or taken. Pause. Ask, if I lose this, do I lose myself? Then remind yourself, I will still have virtue. I still have character. I still have me. That's your anchor. That's your return to center. And when you practice that return often, it becomes default. You enjoy without depending. You invest without needing. You can risk without falling. Preferred indifference is not Stoic denial. It's Stoic mastery. You don't resist good, you welcome it. Then you let it go. You protect your inner domain, even as the outer world flows. You hold your heart gently, not clench it in fear. That's true power. That's living like the Stoics. Let's get even more daily. Imagine your phone dies midday. Total meltdown or a reminder. Technology is nice, not necessary. You're still connected within. If your favorite shoes rip, solid feeling ripped from fear, or a reminder, shoes are tools, not identity. You still walk forward. Daily losses become daily lessons. You won't break, you'll pivot. This mindset is contagious too. When you find peace in impermanence, those around you begin to breathe easier. They see loss without collapse. They see adaptation without denial. They learn to receive love without dependency. They learn to give without expecting always to get back. You become an emotional anchor, not a codependent sponge. Yes, this stability demands discipline. It's not easy to feel loss and not crumble. It's not easy to love without fearing loss. But that's exactly what the Stoics trained for. Marcus Aurelius faced plague, betrayal, wars, and never lost his composure because he held outcomes lightly. He held virtue tightly. This is emotional armor. Love the world, but don't tie your soul to it. Enjoy the gifts, but know they can go. Stand steady when they do. Hold, release, maintain. That's calm mastery. That's dignified poise. That's you choosing to be you, not what you have. 13. Define yourself by your role, not results. So much of life's pressure comes from one loud, sneaky question. Did I win? We ask it after a speech, after a promotion that didn't come through, after a conversation that felt flat. But here's a problem. The outcome isn't in your hands. It depends on variables you can't control. Someone else's mood, market shifts, timing, luck. And yet we stitch our worth to that score. We define ourselves by applause, likes, paychecks, or the final scoreboard. The Stoics had a different playbook. They weren't interested in external validation. They were all about how you show up. They taught that your true identity lives in your roles, not your results. Are you showing up as a good parent, friend, leader, worker, partner? Show up with clarity, courage, honesty, consistency, no matter what the outcome. That's the real win. That's integrity. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations something timeless. Essentially, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Your role invites you to embody that. It doesn't ask for perfection, but for alignment. It doesn't demand applause, but character. If you step into each moment as the person you intend to be, then in that moment you've succeeded, regardless of whether the crowd cheers or the deal closes. Here's what that looks like in real life. Let's say you lead a team at work. You prepare your part, you bring effort, attention, and respect. You invite feedback and work through conflict calmly. Maybe your project doesn't land the way you hoped. Maybe the clients walk away. Does that erase the care you showed along the way? Number you won in your integrity. You upheld your role as a leader. You acted with excellence. That is success, and it builds a foundation that lasts longer than any single outcome. Or imagine parenting. You model love, presence, honesty, discipline, even on days when the kids push your boundaries or the homework battle feels endless. The outcome, test scores, teenage rebellion, weekend moods, can shift unpredictably. But your role? That you were there, that you cared, that you did right day after day. That's what shapes character, not the short-term tally. This mindset shift is more than noble. It's freeing. It means release from agonizing over results. It turns effort into a gift, not a gamble. You understand that the scoreboard is relevant, but it isn't defining. You play your part with heart, with presence, with discipline, because that's what you signed up for, not because it guarantees a reward. Think of an archer. They train, they aim, they release. Then they turn away, because they can't control the wind, the curve, the final path of the arrow. But did their role end at release? Number. They showed up as the archer. They honored the process. Outcome? Secondary. That's Stoic success in action. This approach rewires how you handle disappointment. Instead of spiraling into personal failure when things go south, you ask, did I show up fully? Did I stay clear? Did I hold my values in this moment? If yes, you walk away with your head high, another moment of practicing your worth, another building block in your integrity, and because outcomes are never forever, you can keep going, confident that your identity isn't built on fragile trophies, but on resilience. Still, life isn't a treadmill of roles, it's a dance. And sometimes the music changes unexpectedly. When that happens, return to your center. Ask, who am I supposed to be here? What does my part require? And then show up for that role, not for a prize. That is consistency. That is true power. There's something calm and human in this approach. You stop pretending that life owes you applause. You stop framing every moment as, will I win? Instead, you ask, will I show up? And when you show up with integrity, you win without needing a crown. What does this look like day to day? It's simple habits. Being honest when it's hard. Speaking kindly when it costs you nothing. Apologizing when you mess up. Keeping your commitments even when no one's watching. Holding presence in the room. Listening more than you speak. Giving credit generously. Staying curious, not defensive. In toddler parenting, you're present not because other parents watch, but because that's who you are. At work, you lead, not because you want praise, but because that's the good you fell in love with when you took the position. In friendships, you're reliable not to collect likes, but because that's part of your identity. Of course, putting identity in roles isn't without challenge. We're wired to crave external approval. We're swimming in social media, instant feedback, likes, algorithmic validation. That noise pulls us off course, makes us question who we are when the crowd is silent. But the Stoic answer: return to your roles, practice them away from the headlines, let them be your anchor. Win there. Outcomes can fluctuate, markets crash, relationships shift, bodies age, but roles, if cultivated, don't vanish. You can coach basketball even when you lose the finals. You can love your child even when you disagree. You can work with dignity even when you're underpaid. You can be courageous even when things get messy. That's the kind of win you'll never lose. And when you embody that, you start to create ripples. People notice your consistency. They trust you. They lean on you. They learn from you. They build stability around you. And they celebrate real character, because you were playing your part without a script, not waiting for the applause. Here's the invitation. Stop defining yourself by the scoreboard. Step into your role today, wherever you are. Be a friend, be a parent, be a worker, be a partner. Act with clarity, speak with honesty, move with courage. Let the results be what they are. You've already succeeded by showing up as who you are. And that success, that identity, is yours whether the world nods, claps, or stays silent. Live your roles. Let integrity be your reward. Let your life be the applause that matters. 14. Keep wisdom within reach. Ever notice how the moment life throws a curveball, everything you've practiced goes out the window? 1 second you feel grounded, and the next, a setback, a harsh word, a dropped opportunity. You flip back into panic mode. That's exactly why the Stoics didn't just study wisdom, they carried it in their minds. They called it their Seneca cabinet, mental armor, composed of phrases so powerful that when life crashed in, they could reach in and stabilize their soul. Think of it like having a small toolbox in your pocket. 3 to 5 phrases, but each one sharp enough to slash through panic, doubt, or emotional overwhelm. You open that mental drawer and pull out what you need, almost instantly. That's clarity meeting crisis. Here's why it works. When emotions climb, neural pathways flood, and logic goes into hiding. You become a reactor, not a chooser. But if you've already stored a phrase like, "You always own the option of having no opinion," it pops into awareness like a lifeline. Suddenly you remember, reacting isn't mandatory. You've got another choice. That's less about parroting wisdom and more about creating a cognitive habit. Marcus Aurelius himself didn't have a TED Talk script or motivational post. He had his meditations, his internal phrase book, scribbled for himself in the chaos of empire. One line could reboot his mental OS. It could reboot yours too. Let's walk through a real-world scenario. Picture this. Your boss corners you with criticism in front of others. Your heart races. You feel small, defensive. You've braced for exactly this. Your hand goes to your metaphorical cabinet and you pull out, "I choose my response." Take a breath. Your posture straightens. You say, "Thanks for telling me. I'll reflect on this." You don't mirror the embarrassment or lash out. You ride the moment with intention. To anyone observing, you're calm. To yourself, you saved your sanity. Or a personal test. Someone close betrays your trust. You feel heat, grief, confusion. But you're prepared. You reach for, pain isn't the enemy, your reaction is. Now instead of spiraling, you talk. You set boundaries. You ask for clarity. Your response becomes the focus. You don't let the hurt write your story. You do. Slow roll over chaos. That's living intentionally. Building your Seneca cabinet doesn't need to be fancy. You can write phrases on your phone, repeat them in the shower, or post them where you get triggered, like by your work computer or mirror. The key is repetition until they fire reflexively. Think of them as mental rebars, reinforcement beams for your mind's foundation. Here's another favorite. This too shall pass. Short, clean, Stoic certified. Reminds you, every storm dissolves. It doesn't let panic lodge itself in you. Or something like, I cannot control the world, only myself. That's Epictetus's classic anchor. Use it when gossip or chaos is swirling. Let it center you. You feel freer when you accept your range line, where your responsibility begins and where it ends. Living inside that boundary is where your power lives. And when it's all piled on, when emotional overload hits, you can stack phrases. First grab, pause, observe, choose, then follow with, I can meet this with dignity. You're not throwing lines out one by one. You're staging a rescue. These words warp the moment. They slow time. They open the door for perspective to flow in. Anxiety stops echoing. Anger cools. Fear quiets. Ultimately, these phrases aren't about being stoic robots devoid of feeling. They're about feeling without being consumed. They're the sword and shield against reactivity. They give you the space to act with presence, not panic. As Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. These phrase shortcuts help you remember what you want to be when you can't think straight. Here's a way to begin building your own Seneca cabinet. 1 paragraph every night. 3 to 5 sentences max. Your story today. How you got triggered. What phrase you needed. Write both. Practicing like this embeds them. Over time, triggers become your cue. You feel the emotional shift, and you speak the phrase mentally. You become the practice, and it shows. You'll start to see transformation in how you handle drama. Not just the big fires, but the small annoyances too. The traffic jam, the snippy family comment, the B-grade night out. Those become golden training moments. You pull your phrase, you level frequency, you build resilience. Soon, you won't have to try so hard. Those phrases will pop up organically. You'll be in that moment, and calm will kick in. Because mental reps, like physical reps, eventually produce retention. And that retention shapes your identity. Someone who is composed, no matter what life serves them. Go ahead, choose your armor. 3 powerful statements. Learn them, live them. When chaos knocks, open your cabinet, deploy them, and stand firm. You'll be anchored when the waves hit. Built not by avoiding storms, but by learning to stand while they pass. Build your Seneca cabinet, and let it be the cabin that steadies your soul. 15th. End the day with honest reflection. Every day we race through life on autopilot, until one evening when something in you pauses. You realize the day's emotions are still buzzing inside, pulling at your mind. In that moment, you could scroll mindlessly before bed, or you could pause, breathe, and ask yourself, where did I stay calm today? Where did I lose it? What could I do better tomorrow? That's the secret practice of the greatest Stoics. It's not what you do in public that shapes you. It's what you do in the quiet corners of your mind. And it doesn't demand perfection, it demands honesty. Imagine this. You've had a day full of small frustrations, emails you didn't send, moments you frowned, times you felt tension in your chest or your voice tremble. Those moments don't disappear with sleep. But if you sit down, journal in hand, and gently review them, you begin to map your inner terrain. Was there a moment you snapped at someone? A text that ignited a flash of envy or self-doubt? Or maybe you handled something well, perhaps bleeding slower in traffic, or speaking up calmly in a meeting. You write it. No self-judgment, just recognition. That's how awareness starts to grow. Marcus Aurelius practiced this without ever giving it a flashy name. He ended each day by asking himself if he'd been true to his principles. He didn't need applause, he needed alignment. And by writing it down, reminding himself, it became real. It became part of his identity. Just like him, you too can build a quiet ritual, daily reflection that aligns you with who you're becoming, not just who you were. What you're doing is not self-criticism, it's self-observation. That's important. You're not saying, I'm a failure for freaking out. You're seeing, okay, I did freak out here. Let me understand why. It's a detective stance, not a judge's gavel. That's how you open the door to change. Without blame, without avoidance, just clarity and curiosity. This works because of a simple truth. We become what we notice. Every day, your attention feeds certain parts of you. Your patience, your kindness, your anxiety, your impatience. When you reflect, you shine a light. You plant a seed, and over time, those seeds grow. You repeat small shifts, and they compound into personality transformation. A month of this is a reveal of your patterns. A year of this, you're a different person. You decide which stories you continue to tell yourself. You select from where you react and where you respond. You become someone who doesn't collapse into defeat, who learns from tiny stumbles and edges further toward life you want. Let's get practical. End your day with a pen and paper or a simple note app. Ask those 3 questions. Maybe someone interrupted you. Maybe something didn't go your way. Maybe your child spilled juice on the floor. You stayed calm. You acknowledged it. You moved on. That's progress. Maybe you snapped at the driver who cut you off. Maybe you lashed out at a friend. Maybe you closed off because you felt hurt. That's not failure, it's data. You need it. Perhaps it's to pause longer, to take the scenic drive instead of rushing, to call instead of text when emotions are high. Small plan, small muscle. Build it. Do this nightly, just 5 to 10 minutes, honest, kind, alive to your growth and your flaws. Over time, your mind's quick to catch you in the act of losing it. You already feel the self-awareness muscle growing. And when that muscle is awake, it brings choice right into the fragile moments before chaos hits. This is not about wallowing. It's about clarity. It's not about beating yourself into better behavior. It's about noticing your own humanity, because you're not perfect and you don't need to be. You just need to get up for yourself again tomorrow. Each reflection is a small reset, a commitment that says, I want to be here, awake. Here's the truth. Most transformation doesn't come from extraordinary feats. It comes from everyday awareness, from the quiet before bed, where reflection meets intention. That's where the real work is, behind the scenes. While the world doesn't see you, you see yourself. And when you see yourself, you start to grow yourself. Awareness builds, agency builds alignment. Over time, patterns emerge. Perhaps you notice that your Fridays are always rushed. That's a chance to adjust. Or that your voice tightens each time your partner corners you in conversation. You see it, you plan for it. Maybe tomorrow you hold your tone longer, breathe deeper, stay curious. You're not waiting for big breakthroughs. You're building foundations. You're being the person who creates breakthroughs. Now what? Commit to the ritual. Even if you forgot to reflect one night, you missed tonight. No big deal. You catch tomorrow. That's the pivot of a person who's learning to grow. Not perfect, but consistent. Not rigid, but real. Slowly, you embed resilience, calm, clarity, virtue, whatever words feel right to describe what you're building. You become someone who lives intentionally, who learns deliberately, who cares deeply about their own mind. So yes, your best Stoic isn't the one who doesn't fall, it's the one who rises daily, looks at the fall, learns, and realigns. That's your practice, your nightly reflection. Quiet, personal, powerful. That's how awareness becomes mastery. That's how a life becomes one of quiet strength. Because the real growth happens not at the podium, but in front of yourself, in the stillness of your own presence. At the end of the day, the real battle isn't out there. It's in here, in your mind, in how you respond, not just to life, but to yourself. If you can meet your own reflection with honesty and still choose growth over guilt, clarity over chaos, then you're already winning. Remember, peace doesn't come from perfection, it comes from presence. If this message hit home, there's another video waiting for you right here. Watch that next. And thank you truly for being a part of Stoic Journal. Your journey matters. Keep walking the path.